Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining in again as we continue our series for getting you more engaged and ready to take control of your healthcare as you plan your pregnancies, go through pregnancy, your whole birth process. All of this is to be able to give you tools to assist you in becoming more actively engaged with informed decision making so that you're able to have the birth experiences that you're hoping to have, of course, with the safety of mom and baby always in mind. I want to let you know that I am just a little bit concerned today with information that I received from a friend of mine. There is an FBI investigation into Cedar Sinai Hospital in California. And this is because of the concern, ongoing concern of the treatment of Black mothers. What happened was that in 2016, a woman had cesarean section. Her husband noted after the cesarean section that there was blood in her catheter, and he went to ask for attention. He wanted them to pay attention to what was going on because he knew that this was a problem. This should not be happening. And a CAT scan was ordered that was never done. And some hours later, she finally went back to the operating room, and what they found was she had bled into her abdomen. Keep in mind, the cesarean section took 17 minutes from beginning to end. I have been a scrub nurse on many cesarean sections. I can tell you that that is ridiculous. It is no way that you can safely do major surgery, which is cesarean section is major surgery, that you can do that within 17 minutes. Of course, this mother died, and her husband has pressed forward with lawsuits against this hospital. There were reports in 2018 of his continued suing of this hospital, his efforts for that. And now it's reached the point of where the FBI is now having some kind of investigation. It may not be FBI, but it's the federal civil rights investigation is happening because of the treatment of Black mothers. This broke today, July 2023. And what this does is it brings into reality everything that we have been talking about this week about the maternal death rate. She died of hemorrhage, clearly, because she bled. She died on the day of her baby's birth. There was structural racism, which has been identified by Maternal Mortality Review Committee in Washington, D.C. as a reason for this structural racism, and that they just took their time. They did not see this as an emergency. Now here we are. A woman has died, and her husband has finally getting the attention that's needed. This hospital, from my understanding and reading, has had bad treatment of Black mothers, meaning that there's one sort of treatment for one population, the whites, and when the Blacks come in, the treatment is different. So what we're going to discuss tonight, I will bring this down. What we're going to discuss tonight is getting prepared for a preconception visit. Preconception meaning you're planning on getting pregnant. You want to get pregnant, and what is a great thing to do is to be able to go in to have a visit to get the status of where you are with your health. When you're planning pregnancy, you want to prepare your body to have the healthiest environment possible for this baby to grow in. You're growing a human being. And so you want to have the healthiest environment possible when you're planning the pregnancy. We do know that there are pregnancies that happen that may not have been in the plans. However, they do happen, and that's how life goes on with us. But when you are planning the pregnancy, one thing you can begin doing so that you're able to have this healthy outcome for mom and baby is to have the preconception or pre-pregnancy visit. You need to gather a lot of information so that this visit is going to be all that you need to be able to get the kind of information that you want. And so it's important that you begin gathering information from your family, also from dad's side of the family as well. Information such as what is the family history. You may not know all that's in the family history, but you want to know, is there anyone in the family who has had cancer? Has anyone in the family had any other sorts of diseases or surgeries? For women, it's particularly important that you are asking about what was the pregnancy and birth experience like for your mom? Did your mother have cesarean section? Did she have her babies early before the due date or after the due date? Did your mother have any problems with bleeding too much where she needed a blood transfusion after her pregnancies with any of her babies? These are questions to ask. Other things to know about is your own health history. These things will be asked of you when you go in for your preconception visit. What is your history, your medical history? What is your sexual history? Have you been exposed to any sexually transmitted infections? If so, you would want to be tested for that. You would want to have that treated. Sexually transmitted infections can be transferred to the fetus, and so therefore you would want anything cleared up prior to the pregnancy starting. You also want to know your menstrual history, and this is going to be very important because the due date is based upon the last normal menstrual period. Now, ladies, we know our bodies, and so what we want to look at is what is your normal menstrual cycle like? How many days does it last? I'm sure there are ebbs and flows with the menstrual cycle. I've gone through it too. Some days are heavier than others, but you know what is normal for you. And if you have not started to track your menstrual cycle, this would be the time to track it on a calendar, or you can use an app that's available online to track, because those questions will come up. When was your last normal menstrual period? Was it a normal last menstrual period? It is possible to be pregnant but still have some bleeding that can make you think you're having a menstrual period. Usually, the bleeding is not as long or not as heavy as the normal menstrual period, and it can sometimes confuse women when they think that they may have become pregnant, or when the last menstrual period was, rather. Some women are so in tune with their bodies and also know, almost can say, I know I got pregnant on this day. So just keep all of these things, write all of these things down. The other thing is, if you have had pregnancies before, there will be questions about what were your previous pregnancies? How did they go? Did you have any problems with your previous pregnancies or previous births with your children? Did you have problems with blood pressure? Did you have any problems with bleeding after your baby was born? Excessive bleeding that we talked about, hemorrhage, or even just more where it may not have been hemorrhage, but more bleeding than normal. The other thing to know is if you know your blood type. If you don't, then lab work will be drawn to be able to help you to know your blood type and the Rh factor. This will be important because depending upon the Rh factor and your baby's Rh factor will determine whether or not there needs to be ROGAM, which is given after the baby is born. Understanding the history of baby's father is also important. Um, does the father have sickle cell trait? In other cultures, I can talk more for the Black culture. What are the types of genetic uh, diseases that seem to be more common? But you may want to know, is there anyone in the family that has any kind of genetic disease? Sickle cell trait is something that is passed down to the child from the parent. And if both parents carry sickle cell trait, there is some possibility, not all the time, that the child could end up with sickle cell anemia. This is something that needs to be further discussed. This conversation is not in depth or provide enough information to tell you that, oh, yes, your child would have sickle cell disease. I am not trying to tell you that. It is a possibility if both parents carry sickle cell trait. What has been your family planning use? Are you using a contraceptive method at this time? When do you plan to stop the contraceptive method if you are wanting to become pregnant? These are conversations that can be had during that preconception visit. The other thing that's very important to look at is the social history. We know that the number one reason for women, particularly for women and Hispanic when white women, is mental health. So, questions around how are you with your mental health? How is life? How are stressors in your life? Be honest about these things. It is nothing wrong to admit or to say, I need extra help. You know, the brain is a part of the body, it is something that we need to also treat for depression or whatever we might be encountering. Just know that it's fine to discuss if that is an issue, so that whatever help is required or needed can be provided to you prior to your becoming pregnant and support with you throughout the pregnancy. Things such as housing. What are the social supports? Do you have a supportive family? How are your friends? What are the support systems that you have in place? These are things that I would suggest that you write down so that when you go in for your preconception visit, that you have all this information already available. Sometimes these conversations have not been had with family members, and so you might not know that Aunt Sue had breast cancer or mom had breast cancer unless or well, let's say you may not know that. Usually someone would know that, but there might be other things in the family history that you may not be aware of. The other is lifestyle choices in regard to smoking. We know that smoking is not really recommended during pregnancy, but if you are smoking, you may want to use this time prior to pregnancy to look at how to reduce your smoking. Same thing for the use of any substances. This is the time to consider, if I'm wanting to become pregnant, how can I reduce my smoking, whatever the smoking is for. We know that marijuana is now available in many, many states for recreational use. And so all of these things will be something to consider as you consider becoming pregnant. Any kind of medications that you're on, you would want to write those down. Any types of vitamins or over the counter medicines that you're taking, you would also want to write all of those down so that you can carry those to your preconception, or I would say pre pregnancy checkup with you. Any vaccines that you've had, if you have a record of your vaccines, you would want to bring that record with you. There are some vaccines that are recommended during pregnancy. If you've already had them, then it's good information to know. What is your diet like? Are you on a particular diet? How is your weight? You may find that based upon the weight and your BMI is what is determining where is your weight. Is your weight average? Is your weight above average? Is your weight obese? All of that is measured with the BMI. Again, this visit is meant to kind of be a checkup to see what changes would be healthy for you to make as you consider and prepare for becoming pregnant. So these are the things. Our next meeting, we'll talk more about what happens in that pre-pregnancy visit. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach me either with you in the chat or also on the Facebook page. So again, thank you so much for your time with me. If there's anyone who is wanting to ask any questions at this time, please feel free to put your questions in the chat box. I'll take a look and see where we are. We'll spend time looking at the preconception visit. Think in mind that getting ready for pregnancy requires a couple of things. One is getting yourself, your body ready from a mental and physical perspective, and also from a social perspective in terms of support systems. The other is making decisions about who you're going to hire to help you during the pregnancy in terms of prenatal care, in terms of the birth process. Where are you going to have your baby? These are decisions you are needing to make. And who are the providers that you're going to have? There are many types of providers that can provide very safe care to you. And what we'll do next week, as we'll finish out the preconception visit, what does that mean, particularly in light of the root causes for maternal mortality, what things you may need to watch out for. I cannot personalize this online. These are things that you would need to discuss more fully with your individual healthcare provider. But next week, we will move into looking at where to go based upon your birth experience, your health status, so that you can get the appropriate care during your pregnancy and birth. So thank you again for joining. I look forward to meeting with you again tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.